Hello one and all, welcome to day number 16 of our 6th custom mail-in tournament. For our first group of today, the group that'll be racing is Gray, Puff, Willie G, and Craigster Sr. Now the race begins and Willie G takes an early lead, already about a length ahead or so, as they get into the first turn, and as they come out of it, they are pulling away already, leaving the rest of the pack behind. Now they're heading into the winding turns. Let's see how they do. They're popping loose a little bit, but they manage to get through, which cannot be said for all racers. Now heading towards the final turn, no one anywhere in sight. Now the straightaway, they're trying to stay straight. They are struggling to do so a little bit, but they still manage to finish in first after that, finishing with a 14.69. For the longest time, Stevie C was holding on to the record. I believe it was a 13.33, but then Big Six in the last video came out of nowhere and took that record away, finishing with the new fastest time of 13.17. Meanwhile, we have a non-finisher here on one of the straight paths that used to not be a frequent occurrence, but it seems to have become a little bit more common as the tournament progresses. Puff seemed to be fishtailing a little bit back there, heading into the winding turns. I don't think that affected their overall performance, though. Now, a 14.69 is not the worst time we've seen, not by a long shot. However, given how fast some of these races have become, you want to try and finish under 14 seconds if you can. So a strong start for Willie G, not so much for Gray. Hopefully Gray can make it up here. Now the second race begins. This is about a familiar setup as it can get. Willie G back out in front, but it looks like Craigster Sr. is trying to give him a bit more of a run for his money. But he did have a wide turn, and that seemed to have slowed him down quite a bit. But now that Willie G has the wider turns, let's see if that affects anything. So far it really hasn't. But Willie G is now heading into the final turn. Craigster Sr. struggling to catch up, and Willie G stays much straighter this time. And yet they finished around the same time as the first race. Craigster Sr. ends up finishing in second, followed by Puff. And it looks like we are going to have another non-finish by the same racer, seemingly stuck in almost the exact same spot. Very unfortunate for sure. It looks like they were approaching the turn okay, but I guess they lost so much speed by the time they got there that they just could not push through. For those that do not finish, it's usually at least ideal to finish at least once to say that you can actually do that. But not all racers can get there, unfortunately. So Gray has yet to get on the board. Meanwhile, Willie G just needs one more win in order to automatically move on to today's finals. And given how things have gone so far, it seems very promising, but even some of our best racers will flip over, spin out, or worse. But now Willie G is back out in front, getting through the winding turns just fine. And now they have the smallest turns as they approach the final stretch of the track. Heading into the open area, they're trying to stay straight. They seem to be doing so, but they are moving a bit slower, it seems. And yet that was one of their better times. Meanwhile, Craigster Sr. back out in second. Meanwhile, Puff actually doesn't finish this time either, as they are stuck on the widest part of the turn. That is one of the more common spots for a racer to get stuck. But can Gray say they got any further? Technically, yes, because that's the furthest they've gotten before they stopped. But in other races so far, they've gotten that far and then just ended up going backwards in the end. So I guess something about those winding turns killed enough speed for Puff as well, that they got stuck on the turn as they were moving through it. So this is pretty much in the bag now for Willie G and Craigster Sr. Although Puff could technically still make something happen if they finish in front of Craigster Sr. and Craigster Sr. ends up getting stuck somewhere. And now the fourth and final race for this group. Willie G already moving on to the next round. It's just a matter of who will join them. Right now it is a battle between Puff and Craigster Sr., and it looked like Craigster was in the lead, at least when it comes to those two. Willie G trying to get a sweep and stay undefeated. And, oh my goodness, he spins out. It looks like his back end might have clipped something. He still managed to cross the finish line first. But I'm thinking his back end crossed, or rather clipped the side of the track as they were getting into the open section. And we will have another non-finish. Is it going to be? Yep, it's the same racer in probably the same spot. Overall, that is probably the furthest down the track they've gotten before they stopped, unfortunately. That is not something you want to see, going into a competition only to get stuck in the first half of the track every single time. Now the camera angle here doesn't show exactly what caused Willie G to spin out, but we can always go back and watch the video again to look. But Willie G does get the sweep, so they'll stay undefeated for now, and it is Craigster Sr. joining him in the final round. Now for our second group, we have Bob, Mom, Rowdy Audi, fun little name, and Rebel. And it looks like Rebel is the person out in front right now. Meanwhile, Mom is already way far behind. Not sure what's going on there. But for now, Rebel is seemingly gliding through this winding part of the track. Now has the widest turns, so they won't have to deal with them later at the very least. First one into the open part of the track, no one giving them any competition at the moment, and they cross the finish line in first, finishing 14.21. That is not bad, but now we've seen at least one or two racers finish a full second quicker than that. Are we going to have another non-finisher in this group? Trying to find them currently. And look at this, at least one of the racers couldn't even get through the first turn of the track. But it seems we have another non-finisher. This is crazy. We usually have a non-finisher every once in a while, but today we have had at least 3 racers struggle to get to the finish line, much less the first turn in the track or so. So definitely a good start for those that did finish, especially because there were at least 2 that did not. Bob and Mom were the ones to struggle. Rebel and Rowdy off to a good start. And those 2 non-finishes puts them at a bigger advantage here. Rowdy Audi fishtailing a little bit as they approach the first turn, but now Rebel is taking off once again. Can Rowdy Audi give them any competition? Rebel getting through the winding turns okay, seemed to shake a little bit, but they didn't get shaken up so much to the point where they lost control. Now they're heading into the final stretch before the finish line, and they stay off the walls for the most part. That's honestly pretty impressive whenever a racer does that. And they finish with a decent 14.34. Meanwhile, Rowdy Audi ends up finishing in second. Meanwhile, Bob and Mom almost stuck in the exact same spot. Did they both at least get to the turn ahead of them before pushing backwards? We'll have to take a look here. Now, the other 2 already got through the turn by the time they approached it. In fact, Mom didn't even get there. They just got stuck on the straightaway. If you just saw where they ended up, you would have thought that Mom got further, but that is not the case here. So once again, only 2 people finishing. That puts them in a much better position, while Bob and Mom have yet to get through the first couple of turns on this track here. Rebel and Rowdy Audi trying to make more of a competition here, but given that both of them are the only two to have finished so far, they can breathe much easier right now. They don't want to get too cocky. You can see Mom struggling again up there. Hopefully they can at least get through the second turn. Right now, though, Rebel is cruising towards the finish line for another victory, and they will get it. They are trying ever so hard to break that 14-second mark. So far can't do it, but it seems like they're crawling ever so closer with each race. And once again, he and Rowdy Audi are the only two to finish. Mom stuck under the overpass there, whereas Bob is just stuck on that turn. Bob seems to be able to at least get to the turn. I'm not sure if Mom has gotten that far yet. Judging on the replay, it's weird to see someone get stuck while going downhill, but that seems to be what's happening with Mom right now. I'm not the greatest physics expert, but you would think someone with wheels going downhill would find it very difficult to stop on an incline. But now that Rowdy Audi and Rebel have finished all 3 times in first and second respectively, it is literally impossible for them to lose. So they could potentially just relax on this race and still move on. But Rebel is still looking for that sweep at the very least. But even if they get the sweep and try to stay undefeated, they will have to go up against Willie G. And so far, they're performing at least pretty decently overall. But they did clip the wall there. They managed to stay straight, however. And they managed to get the sweep with a 14.36 as their final time in this group. Rowdy Audi finishing in second. And it seems, well, we can at least say Bob got much further down the track this time. I think they even got through the winding turns in the end. Meanwhile, Mom just did not have the energy to get through the final race, even getting through the first turn, no less. Every once in a while, you usually get at least one person that struggles to get to the finish line, but today we've had at least 3 racers that can't even get to through the first or second turn. This is highly unusual, but also highly unfortunate. But we do have to move on at this point because Rowdy Audi and Rebel are moving on to today's final round. And they will be joined by both Willie G and Craigster Sr. Willie G and Rebel are the ones to watch right now because they both have not lost a race yet here. And they are just about neck and neck, but Willie G had the inside turn at least compared between the two, so that'll help them at least for the time being. For the first one in and out of the winding turns. However, Rebel is closing the gap and they surpass Willie G. But they are keeping it close for sure. Rebel the first one into the open area. But Willie G is trying to close the gap. They could not quite do it, however. They made it extremely close. Meanwhile, Rowdy Audi saw that Craigster Sr. had stopped just short of the finish line and wasn't going to get any points. So being the good sport that they were, they pushed Craigster Sr. across the finish line before they themselves did. Now look at this, you could see that Craigster Sr. was almost there, but then was pushed forward. So all of them managed to at least get a single point, if not more. So we'll see if that happens again in this race or not. But now Rebel is the one that could potentially come out of this undefeated. But we'll see if anything changes between these two as they switch tracks. Craigster Sr. trying to give these top two some competition right now. And once again, Rebel overtakes Willie G after they get through the turn preceding the winding turns. Rebel just a couple lengths ahead. Willie G once again trying to close the gap, but was unable to. Meanwhile, Craigster Sr. slides sideways across the finish line. And Rowdy Audi finishing in fourth. This is the only group today where all 4 have finished so far. You definitely have some competition between Rebel and Willie G, but both times so far, as Rebel overtakes Willie, he has not lost the lead. Willie G seems to start out stronger, but doesn't quite get there. But now we have 2 more races to go. Rebel just needs 1 more to guarantee that they move on to the next part of the tournament. But here comes Willie G trying to take the lead back. A little unsuccessful so far, but now they have the innermost turn. And now they will overtake Rebel. So will this help them stop Rebel from staying undefeated? It looks like they will. They are slowing down a bit, but it's not going to be enough for Rebel to overtake them. So no one is coming out of this video undefeated. But I think everyone managed to finish this time around. A fantastic performance by them, to be sure. So with these two, they seem pretty evenly skilled. It's just a matter of which lane they're in the end, it seems. They could end up tying, but even if they do, they would finish in the top 2, so they'd both move on regardless. But now we'll see how they handle these last couple of lanes. So far, it's going in Willie G's favor, but Rebel will have the tighter turns in a second here. So we'll see if that helps them at all. It does help them close the gap, but so far Willie G still holds on to the lead by a thread here. Now they're in the open section. Rebel trying to pass them, could not quite do it. But given that they finished in the top 2, it will be Willie G and Rebel moving on. A valiant effort by all 4 of these guys. But ultimately, only 2 of them can move on, and that is exactly what happened here for Rebel and Willie G. No one seemed to be able to finish under 14 seconds, but maybe they can improve as they move on to the next part of the tournament. So congratulations to Rebel and Willie G as they round up the next section of our roster, advancing to the next part of the tournament. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all next time.